Yes, dear friends, this is our chapter 1 from the course, that is the nuclear physics. First chapter, its title is Basic Nuclear Properties. Now, let's go for this first discussion of this particular properties, what this particular nuclear physics or what these particular properties are. We'll discuss one by one. Let me skip all these things which I have taken yesterday. So this is what a basic entity of every material. So whether it is a solid, whether it's a liquid or gas or anything around us, or we are also made up of certain materials. Now all these materials are made up of atoms and molecules. When we look inside these atoms or molecules, again we get a very perfect structure like this. So for example, you have learned earlier this hydrogen atom, where we call in case of hydrogen atom, there is a one nucleus, heavy part, and then around this hydrogen the nucleus there are number of orbits in which a different number of electrons are accommodated. So here in SYBSE as well as in atomic and molecular spectra, we have already learned vector atom model. Thereby we have understood the concept of atom, concept or the structure of the atom, how electrons are distributed around that particular nucleus or that particular heavy entity inside an atom. Now their accommodation, their other properties, chemical, physical properties, etc. and spectrum too, everything can be discussed once we understand this structure of an atom. Now when one or two atoms come together, three atoms come together, that forms a molecule, diatomic molecule, triatomic molecule, or multi-atomic molecules, and so many things are there. So thereby we have already learned a subject that is called as atomic and molecular spectra. We have learned we sometimes will learn this material science, and we learn chemistry, different types of chemistry, organic, inorganic or physical chemistry, and all these things. So all these things are a part of our study or learning before we go into study of this entity inside this atom, which is called as a nucleus. So this is a nucleus, and this is one entity, or already we have studied these particular things. Nucleus carries maximum weight of that particular atom, weight in the sense mass I should call. So maximum mass, more than 99.99% of mass of atom is composed inside a nucleus. It is very heavy as compared to atom, and the entire mass is there. Therefore most of the mass of an atom comes because of that particular thing, which is called as a nucleus. And now we have been familiar earlier with this, what are the constituents of the nucleus, and both of these constituents already we have known. These are called as basically protons and neutrons. So one is a symbol used for that is P, which is called as proton, whereas another symbol is either capital N or sometimes we use small n too, and this is called as a neutron. So these are called as constituents of the nucleus. So constituents of the nucleus are basically protons and neutrons. We will talk something more about them in our course in the course of the time as we go ahead and ahead. But before that, these are said to be elementary particle. Actually these are not elementary, but at present we are calling them to be elementary particle. These are the particles which are having some very specific properties. They come together and they form a nucleus. Now in periodic table we have elements right from number 1, that is your first element we write to be 1H1, and then second element we go to be twice He4, or in between that is 3Li7, then 6C12, etc. All these are called as different atoms of different elements. So hydrogen, carbon, oxygen, magnesium. How many numbers are this? Total number we know. This number is at present it reaches to up to 110 or 115 something. Okay, so this last 5 elements are very their lifetime is very small. So these are fraction of second or millisecond, microsecond, and so on. So they are completely unstable, but this total periodic table goes up to 115 total elements at present, and this entire universe in which we are living, or the materials from which we have been made, Okay, almost 115 elements are not there in our body, very few elements are there, but the entire things around us and we are made up of all these elements and their molecules and their other components and the materials, solids, liquids and gases, and that is what we call any entity around us. So that is the different part that studies the different studies here, maybe biology, maybe chemistry, maybe physics or anything else. Other than that, when we look inside this atom and inside this small, very small entity, heavy massed, heavy entity inside an atom, that is called as a nucleus, and components of that already we have known, that is called as proton and neutron. And now how to define every atom or the nucleus. Okay, atom is defining atom or describing atom in chemistry, we use these chemical symbols and all these things. Here in nuclear physics also we use this type of terminology. So the symbol of an atomic nucleus, any atomic nucleus is given by, okay, A, Z, X and then N. So what this A is, what is this Z, what is this N, that is also known to us, but let's revise these things again. Here Z is the atomic number or the number of protons contained by that particular nucleus, that is defined by Z, it is written here. Then N is the number of neutrons or the number of neutrons contained by that particular nucleus, that is given by capital N. And this capital A is the addition of the Z plus N, and that is called as the mass number. So you have to remember this. This is called as mass number, which is given by simply addition of number of protons and number of neutrons. And X is the letter or the English alphabetic letter. Okay, sometimes single, sometimes double, and like that. Mostly single and very few times double. Okay, you know all that. So this is a chemical element symbol. So for example, if I go for this example of carbon, very common element of which we are made up of, we write carbon as 6C12. Sometimes we write this 12 here, sometimes we write this 6C12, these two. So both of these to be understood, we have to understood this number is nothing but Z, that is the number of protons contained by this carbon nucleus, and this total is the total number of nucleons, protons plus neutrons contained by the carbon nucleus, and therefore 12 minus 6 comes to be 6. That is what I have to understand. When there are 6 protons and there are 12 nucleons, 12 minus 6 is the 6 neutrons are contained by this. So carbon element contains 6 protons and 6 neutrons, and thereby total number of nucleons contained by carbon is exactly 12, and that is very symmetric and very nice element, because as I said, we are made up of carbon. Most of the material inside our body is the carbon atoms and their compounds and lot many things. Why and all these things we can discuss all these things later on. So here this is what a method to define any element. Okay, element, I am saying chemical element in the periodic table or in nuclear physics. This is defined also depending on different books. As I said, some people write this 12 here, some people write this 12 some here, like that. So as per your choice, you can go for any of the method, but we are going to follow this method 6C12. So this indicates this is the number of protons, this 12 indicates this is A, which is N plus Z. So I have to understand, if N, this A is 12, then 12 is equal to 6 plus 6. That indicates there are 6 protons and 6 neutrons inside the carbon atom, and this is what we are going to use for any of the elements. So like element, we go for 92 uranium 236. So this is one of the heavier element, radioactive one. It has large many number of applications, and very commonly we are going to use very frequently, but we are going to use this example later on. So this 92 uranium 236, we can very easily go for this calculation. So 236 minus 92, if I go for this calculation, 6 minus 2 is 4. Now this is 13 minus 9 is 4 again, and 2 minus 1 is 1. So this contains 144 number of neutrons and 92 protons, and this becomes a heavy element, radioactive element, and that is a uranium, as we say here. Okay, and thus each nuclear species, okay, so each nuclear species with given Z and A is called as nuclide. Therefore sometimes we write this way, uranium 92 and 236, okay, this way, or 235, whatever. This is called, that is called to be isomer of this. So this is carbon is written as C, 6 and 12. oxygen is written as 8 and 16. So I have to remember, first number is the number of protons and second number is the number of nucleons contained by that particular nucleus. So there are different methods used in nuclear physics to write a symbol or the right to explain or the on paper. That means how to write an element on paper. That is what we use different types of methods as we have discussed here. So either I can go by this method, or I can go by this method, or I can go by this method. Any of the method can be applied, and that is how we write a nucleus, or that is called as nuclear species with given Z, and A is called as a nuclide. So henceforth we are going to use this word nuclide very frequently. Nuclide means actually it is a nucleus, and we are calling the components as protons and neutrons are as the nucleons. Okay, combined collectively they are called as nucleons. And whenever all these nucleons do come together and they form an entity which is nucleus, sometimes, most of the times, we are calling it to be nuclide. So nuclide, nucleus, nucleons, these are the words you have to be very familiar with in the entire syllabus or entire this course of this particular nuclear physics. So, and then next point here is Z characterized with chemical element. As I said, C is the symbol used for carbon, O is the symbol used for oxygen, N is the symbol used for nitrogen, U is the symbol used for uranium, and like that. You all know this in chemistry, in other types of other branches also you have learned all these things. So we are not repeating all these things. Now the last point here is the dependence of chemical properties on N is negligible. So that one thing is also known to us. So whatever chemical properties of any of the elements, that depends on the number Z, and whatever Z, same number of electrons are found to be in that nucleus. So for a simple example, I'll just write it here, or I have given this case. So suppose this is look like a nucleus. I am calling this to be an entity like nucleus. Out of that, these are some particles, green looking, I am calling them to be neutron, and this other color, brown, these are called up to be a proton. So that shows this, they are very densely packed, came together by something. Now what is that something? That is what the nuclear force we call. So these protons and neutrons are organized in such a manner that this particular nucleus becomes not exactly spherical but about spherical. So some spherical shape is taken by that, because this is the what the nature always behaves in such a manner that the material tries to occupy a minimum volume and at a given surface area, and that's how sphere is one of such geometrical shape here, which has the maximum area and minimum volume, and that is the tendency of nature, and nature compels this particular nucleus to have a spherical shape. In general, spherical shape. Every nucleus is not spherical, but in general we conclude that nucleus is spherical, which contains of protons and neutrons. Neutrons are neutral, okay, neutral in the sense they do not take part in any chemical reaction or physical reactions. Very not, this is a bold statement, but this, out of this, the proton plays a very vital role, because we know that in an atom, whatever number of protons we do have, same number of electrons are there. So as in case, we know that total number of charges are proton Z plus, and total number of electron charges are minus, that is Z. So addition of these two we get to be 0. So that is why we called atom to be a neutral one. But here in case of the nucleus, the protons carry positive charge, whereas neutrons are neutral. Okay, don't call it to be zero charge. Zero charge means absence of charge. This is not true. Actually, nucleus consists of both positive and negative charges at the same time, and that's why its total charge is 0 or neutral. It is not chargeless. I am not calling it to be chargeless. Chargeless means it is not containing any charge. This never happens. So proton is a positively charged particle, whereas neutron is neutral. Okay, don't call zero charge. It's a neutral, means it consists of this positive and negative charges simultaneously, and when all the two come together, that forms a nucleus. And therefore we can show here there is some force existing between this neutron, there is some force existing between this neutron proton, and there is also a force existing between this proton and proton. So this force which binds all these nucleons inside the nucleus with a very strong binding, because this particular force has to overcome the electrostatic repulsion between positive and positive charges. So proton positive charge, according to electromagnetic theory, we say that when two positive charges do come together, there must be repulsion, but this is the force, nuclear force, which overcomes this nuclear repulsion or this electromagnetic repulsion, and that compels both of these protons, even though they are charged particle, they are supposed to remain together inside the nucleus with a strong bonding. So this is strong bond exists between proton and proton at a very small distance, nuclear distance, and that force is called as nuclear force. And you will find further in the chapter number 3, we are going to learn in detail that this force, which is called as nuclear force, is independent of the charges. So that means in between force between proton neutron or neutron, these are identical. So the new force we are going to introduce here in nuclear physics, which is called as strong nuclear force, but that will be dealt in detail in the next chapter number 3. So here at present we have to understand, while considering any of the nucleus, we must have protons and neutrons. Proton have some specific properties along with its positive charge and some mass. Neutron also have some mass, but its charge is zero. Not zero, it's neutral. And all these protons and neutrons are bound together by a strong nuclear force, and thereby usually we get a spherical nucleus. Now there is, when we go for case of hydrogen, there is only one proton. In case of helium, we go for 2 protons and 2 neutrons. In case of carbon, we have 6 protons and 6 neutrons, and thereby as we go on increasing this A is the nucleon number of protons and neutrons plus neutrons. As we go on increasing, we get a different types of the size of the nucleus goes on increasing. For this is for hydrogen. For helium, it will look like this. For carbon, it will have 6 number of protons and 6 number of neutrons. So here in all, it will be 20. That means, so size of this, size of this, size of this particular size goes on increasing as much as many as number of nucleons are coming together. Just a minute, let me finish. Sorry. Yeah. So this is how a first very simple nuclear property we have discussed here is that what are the nuclear properties, or out of this what is the nucleus itself, concept of the nucleus. And remember to arrive this conclusion that nucleus is like this. So this way entire inquiry in the science that started maybe 15th century, 16th century, or earlier than that, we arrive at the conclusion that in an atom there is a nucleus, and this nucleus possesses these properties. It has taken lot many effort for the scientist as well as lot many years. Only in the 19th century, okay, around 1900 or somewhere like that, we try to understand this particular entity which is called as nucleus, and then we started to understand its properties, and then the subject became a new subject, that is a nuclear physics. So understanding basic concepts of nuclear physics, it took almost 2000 years when this first inquiry started from the materials to arrive at the conclusion of the nucleus or getting the properties again of nucleus. We took almost 2000 years to go for this. So this is a very huge journey, big journey, and we are trying to understand this concept nowadays very easily because we already known all these things. But still today we have not understood each and every property of the nucleus. So don't have a misconception, confusion that we know everything about nucleus. That is not true. Still there are many properties of the nucleus are not unanswered, and a lot of research is going on by different branches of physics. But nuclear physics is one of the branch that deals with this type of entity what we have discussed here. So what is proton, what is neutron, how they do come together, how they form a nucleus, etc. These are very basic revision type of things which we have seen in this particular first slide. So I am sure you are enjoying all this, students, dear students. So is it okay, or shall we change? Okay. Hello, is there anyone? Mr. Onkar, Priyanka, or anyone else?
Yes, sir.
Please,
Yes, sir.
are you getting the things what I am saying? मी जे शिकवतोय ते समजतंय का हे मी विचारतोय.
No, sir.
Oh, sir.
Okay, shall let's continue. Okay, continue ahead. Now this is the second slide I'm showing here that deals with the mass of different types of nucleus and its components. Components means protons and neutrons. Remember, in physics we generally use the symbol, or we use the unit for mass measurement of mass is either kilograms or grams or milligrams and so on. Okay, so grams and kilograms, in CGS we use this unit, CGS, and in MKS we use kilograms and so on. Then bigger units of mass are known, smaller units of mass are known, but these grams, kilograms, milligrams, etc., these units are much bigger, very very big units as compared to actual mass of the protons, neutrons, or the nucleus itself. And that's why in nuclear physics we have to use another concept of, or the another unit for the measurement of masses of all these entities, and that is called as atomic mass unit. So nuclear and atomic mass is often given in a small symbol used for, that is small u, and this is defined as the atomic mass unit. So before we introduce this, let me make it clear why to use atomic mass unit. So remember, as I said, measuring mass of any of the nucleus either in grams or kilograms, these numbers are very very small numbers. For example, when we go for mass of the protons or neutrons, okay, for example, any of the bus or the electron, mass of the electron is 9.31 into 10 raised to minus 31 kilograms. In grams it is minus 28. Mass of the proton, if we go for its measurement, it comes to be 10, this is given here, around 10 raised to minus 27 kilograms and so on. So these numbers are very very small number to deal when we go for actual calculations of all these masses and the energy involved in the process. So these numbers causes a lot of problems, and to remove this discrepancy or to get rid of this particular problem, scientists at that time developed a new unit of measurement of mass in nuclear physics, which is called as atomic mass unit. And let's see how this atomic mass unit is defined. We have to take this is 12, mass of the neutral, so carbon atom is 6C12. We are assuming this mass of the carbon atom, okay, atom I am calling, is to be 12 atomic mass unit or 12. And so measure mass of the carbon atom in grams and kilograms, equivalent, that is said to be equivalent to be 12 atomic mass unit. And therefore getting atomic mass unit is that we have to just divide this mass of carbon atom in kilograms divided by total number of nucleons contained by that carbon nucleus is 12. So that is how whatever quantity we get as a resultant of this, that is called as 1 atomic mass unit. So 1 AMU defined is as, I am just writing here, 1 AMU is mass of 6C12 in kilograms divided by number of nucleons contained by, this is 12. So measure mass of carbon in kilograms, okay, by several methods. There are different methods with which we can measure very accurately mass of the carbon nucleus and divide atom or nucleus, because mass of the atom is very equal to the mass of the nucleus, because as I said, 99.99% of the mass of the atom is consisted in the nucleus. So I am calling sometimes nucleus or sometimes mass atom. So take the total mass of nucleus, carbon nucleus or carbon atom to be 12 and divide, that is measure it in kilograms and divide it by total number of nucleons, that is 12 in this case. So whatever number comes here in this case, that comes to be this 1 atomic mass unit is equal to, if it is calculated this way, it comes to be 1.6605 into 10 raised to minus 27 kilograms. So our 1 atomic mass unit is equal to 1.6605 into 10 raised to minus 27 kilograms. And how it has been calculated? Using this calculation, so measure mass of the carbon atom in kilograms and divide it by 12, I get this number, and that is called as 1 atomic mass unit. So henceforth, defining or measuring mass of the proton or neutron or electron or any of the nucleus, we usually use this unit. So we have to measure mass of the carbon atom is 12 U. Mass of the hydrogen is 1 U, not 1 exactly, but something, some difference. Mass of the oxygen is 8O16, so that is something 16 U. Okay, 16 point something, some fraction is there. We will understand why this fraction is there always. So this is a way of, this is the measurement way of mass of the atomic nucleus as well as its components or constituents. So atomic mass unit is one of the very frequently and convenient unit used, defined by nuclear physicists, and it is used in nuclear physics. Other than that, there is one more very simple and common unit is also defined, and that is called as energy unit or mass energy unit. And we have already seen that in earlier course of this atomic and mathematical methods of physics in theory of relativity. There is a mass energy equivalent relation or interchangeable. Mass and energy are interchangeable, and this equivalence relation is called as E is equal to mc square. So this is your Einstein's mass energy equation, and this equation tells what much amount of energy will be released when certain mass disappears, or when certain energy gets disappeared, how much mass will be generated there. So mass and energy are interconvertible, interchangeable. So one mass disappears, energy is generated. When energy disappears, mass is generated, or vice versa. So this energy mass equivalent help us a lot defining in another unit, and that is called as the unit that is called as either electron volt, or it is also called as 1 million electron volt. So therefore in nuclear physics, another very common units used in the measurement of masses, not grams, kilograms, not even this atomic mass units, but this energy mass equivalence relationship, that is very frequently used in measurement of certain masses of the nuclei as well as protons and neutrons and all other elementary particles, and that unit is called as 1 million electron volt. So 1 MeV. Okay, and if it is calculated, it comes to be 1.602 into 10 raised to minus 13 joules. Now how to come arrive with this? That is what we have to go for this calculation using this E is equal to mc square. So use this m, whatever m we have calculated, that is equal to 1.66 into 10 raised to minus 27 kilograms. That is the amount of mass equivalent to one atomic unit, and if it is multiplied by this c square, that is speed of the light, square of that, we get that amount of energy in joules. And if we go for a bigger unit of that, that if it is divided by 1 electron volts. Now 1 electron volt is the amount of energy gained by electron when it is accelerated through a potential of 1 volt. So when this electron is emitted or released here, it will get accelerated towards this particular positive plate, and it will gain certain amount of energy, and that is called as 1 electron volts. So if I go for calculation of this energy in 1 electron volt, and if I know this total amount of energy released when this one atomic mass unit is disappeared, I'll get certain amount of energy, and if it is divided by this unit of the energy, 1 electron volt is nothing but 1 electron volt is charge of the electron is 1.6 into 10 raised to minus 19 coulombs and into 1 volt. So this much amount of energy is 1.6 into 10 raised to minus 19 joules. And when I divide this amount, so when this U is converted into energy by multiplying by c square, whatever joules we are getting, if it is divided by this number 1.6 into 10 raised to minus 19 joules, we get a unit which is called as 1 million electron volt, and this is equivalent to, in joules if it is calculated, is comes to be 1.602 into 10 raised to minus 13 joules. So try to understand how we have used, actually we are not using grams, kilograms, we are using U or atomic mass units, and this atomic mass unit also can be converted into MeV by using this E is equal to mc square relationship and like that, and therefore 1 MeV is equal to 1.602 into 10 raised to minus 13 joules, or 1 atomic mass unit is equal to 931.5 MeV per c square. So this is interconversion. That means 1 MeV in joules is given by above relation, this one, or 1 atomic mass unit in terms of this energy mass relationship is given by this. So just remember this, 1 atomic mass unit is 931.5 million electron volts per c square. So this is called as the mass energy unit used in this case. So in spite of using grams, kilograms, sometimes we use atomic mass unit, and most of the times we are going to use this unit, which is called as the million electron volts. So that's why in nuclear physics, rather using grams, kilograms or atomic mass unit, people or scientists prefer using this energy mass unit or mass energy unit, which is called as million electron volts, and convergence of that can be studied, can be understood, can be calculated, which is given there. Using this unit for measurement of mass, we get this 1 U is equal to 931.5 MeV. And now we have to use all these things to measure masses of protons, measure masses of neutrons as well as electron. That is as per the following table. So see this table, some nucleon and electron properties. So what is this? For first, it is a proton. This is a particle. Symbol used, that is sometimes capital B, sometimes small p, that is a choice of the person who uses this. Then if its rest energy, if it is measured, rest energy is mc square plus m0 c square. I think you might have earlier done all these things. So this rest energy is given, but this is called as a rest mass energy, and this is energy in motion. So kinetic energy plus this rest mass energy is called as rest energy. And if it is this energy is calculated for a proton, it comes to be 938.272 MeV. Okay, this is the rest mass energy. And charge for the proton, as all we know, that is plus E charge, equivalent to electron but as the positive charge. And if its mass is measured in, now look at this number, 1.0072765 atomic mass unit, bigger than 1, just bigger than 1, 0.0072765 atomic mass unit. Spin of that is 1/2. We'll talk about this later on. And it has certain magnetic moment which is positive, and this is 2.79 into nuclear magnetic moment. So this is a unit of magnetic moment, that is called as nuclear magnetic moment, and it is 2.79, but it is type of the positive. So lot many other physical properties of this proton can be understood from this table only. We'll discuss this later on as we discuss all the properties. Now go for neutron. For neutron, symbol is N. Now look here, this number is 938 here for proton, 938.272, whereas for neutron it is 939.566. You will feel there is some difference in the mass between proton and neutron if it is measured in terms of this rest energy MeV, or if it is measured in case of atomic mass unit, this is 1.0072765, but here in case of neutron this is small, bigger. Okay, it is 1.0086649. So we can see that there is a net difference between masses of protons and neutrons if it is measured in atomic mass unit, as well as if it is measured in this MeV or electron mass energy MEV, that is mass energy relationship using this mass unit. So that shows neutron is heavier, little heavier than the proton. Why this is this way, that also we are going to discuss in detail in the chapter number 3. So neutron carries some more mass as compared to proton in a fraction, okay, not even 1% difference, even than that, less than that difference is there, but that difference plays a very vital and important role in other properties of both of these constituent of the nucleus. So remember, charge of the neutron is simply given 0, but not 0, it is neutral. Then mass of the neutron in atomic mass unit is just bigger as shown here. We can get the difference between these two. Spin of this is also 1/2. And now look at this number, this is minus 1.91 times mu n, that is nuclear magnetic moment. This time it is negative. That suggests you something very interesting about nucleus, that nucleus is not chargeless, it is neutral, it possesses positive and negative charges and distribution of charge over the nucleus. Now over the neutron, for the case if this is proton, now whatever charge we are calling 1.6 into 10 raised to minus 19 coulombs positive charge, this charge is distributed over this proton in such a manner, looking from any sides. If I am looking from this side or this side or this side, measuring this charge, I will find this charge distribution over this proton is same everywhere. So looking from south side or north side or west side or east side, or any of the section of this proton is taken, and if I go for charge density measurement here, if it is measured here also, everywhere you will find to be same. So distribution of electronic charge or that charge over the proton is asymmetric. If it will look everywhere, that is isotropic also. So if it is not that more charge is on one side and less charge, that polarization is not found to be there in case of proton. So all the positive charge over the proton is distributed in such a manner, its charge density over each and every point on that proton is found to be same. Now this is not the case here. In case of neutron, okay, now we don't know, there is some neutron positive charges here and negative charges distributed here. Now this distribution of positive and negative charges is such that its magnetic moment is not zero, but it is something negative, and that indicates neutron is little bit different, and that's what the reason neutron is having some more mass. It has some different mass, either in measured any of the unit. It is neutral and it is constituent of the nucleus, and both of these protons and neutrons forms a nucleus in the stable form. Now more about this, their magnetic properties, etc., we are going to see somewhat later on. Then one more thing about this spin. Both of these particles are, in according to statistics, we call these particles to be fermions. So they obey Fermi-Dirac distribution. Now this is from the statistical mechanical concept, where this spin of the particles decides their category, whether they are fermions, whether they are bosons, or whether they are Maxwell particles, like that. Here both all these are the fermions, so they have to obey Fermi-Dirac statistics, and that's why when we go for entire discussion of these elementary particles, more about things we'll discuss there as well. So these are called as fermions. They have spin to be 1/2. What actual spin is, why it is important, what it plays a important role in this nucleus, etc. These bigger concepts, advanced concepts, will see something later on as we go for next thing. So this second particle in this table, that is neutron, which has these properties, and there is a little difference between proton and neutron, not in terms of symbols or charges, but even in case of masses. Spin of both of these are identical, whereas magnetic moment of proton is positive, whereas magnetic moment of neutron is negative. That suggests or tells me something about the charge distribution over proton as well as charge distribution over neutron. Neutron charge distribution is little bit different. That's why it gives rise to a magnetic moment which is of the negative type, and that is the basic difference, proton and neutron. Otherwise both of these are just same. More about this we'll discuss in chapter number 3 when we go for actually elementary particles. And now look, in comparison to this proton and neutron, which are constituent of the nucleus, look at the properties of the electron. Symbol is E, we know all that. Now look at the mass. Now mass of the electron in comparison to either proton or neutron, if it is calculated, this is very small. It's a fraction, not even 1 MeV. It is 0.51100 MeV, and that's why as compared to proton and neutron, this electron is much lighter particle. Almost, if you go for actual calculation, we get this to be 1836 times smaller than that means if this many number of electrons come together, then we get one proton. So proton mass is 136 times greater than the mass of the nucleus. Neutron is even heavier than the electron. So electron is very light particle. That's why it is included in the lepton group, and protons and neutrons are almost 1836 times heavier in case of as compared to this electron. That's why they are the heavy particles, and that's why whenever there is one proton and one neutron inside the nucleus and one electron outside the nucleus in an atom, mass of the electron is much negligible. You can directly discard this because its mass provided to the electron is much small. It is 0.5110. So you can understand. So mass, if it is measured in atomic mass unit also, it is found to be in fraction. This E minus E is the charge for the electron. It also possesses its spin is also 1/2. So this is also in the same group, Fermi group or Fermion group, and this also has a negative magnetic moment that is given to be minus 1.00116 mu B, Bohr magneton. In case of electron, what we measure its magnetic momentum is terms of Bohr magneton, whereas in case of protons and neutrons, what were measured is that is the nuclear magneton, that is mu N. So one is positive, for neutron it is negative, and for electron also it is negative. That means magnetic properties of electron and proton has something, electron and neutron has something common, whereas something different for in case of proton. So all these numbers measured theoretically as well as calculated experimentally, and what about their magnetic properties, etc., that will be discussed later on when we go for higher advanced properties of this. And therefore, last statement here, both neutrons and protons, as I already we have called them to be nucleons, are constructed of other particles called as quarks. So this story doesn't end here. Protons and neutrons also have some internal structure, and what is that internal structure, or the component of that internal structure, is called as quarks. So quark theory is another theory with which we have to deal something when we go in the chapter number 3, that it is said that these protons and neutrons are also have subparticles or constituents, and these are called as quarks. Now 6 different types of quarks are existing. So proton is made up of 3 quarks, as well as neutron is also made up of 3 quarks, and that's the quarks inside the protons and neutrons are different. Therefore protons and neutrons are a little bit different. Masses may be approximately same, not exactly same. Neutron is much a bit heavier than proton, but inside internal structure of them are a bit different, and that is called as quark theory, that we are going to discuss later on when we go for actual discussion of all these things. So this is what the concept of mass used in nuclear physics, how to measure the masses of different constituents of the nucleus or nucleus itself. We don't use grams, kilograms, we use atomic mass unit. Atomic mass unit is defined the method what we have defined earlier, and the most convenient and useful unit found in nuclear physics is that we can use this mass energy equivalence unit, that is called as million electron volts. So measuring masses of protons, neutrons, nucleus, electrons, rather all time use this million electron volt unit, and that helps you a lot easier for calculations and discussing other properties of all these elementary particles, as well as the nucleus, as well as an atom. So this is what the second slide that deals with the mass of the different types of atoms and the methods measured in this case. So this is our second slide. Now let's move to the third one. As we have to go for, this is called get some idea about the size of the nucleus. Now see, size of the nucleus. Now for comparison purpose, okay, I will give a very crude example. We already almost we have seen this is the cricket stadium, okay, used ground, okay, Balewadi stadium or anywhere, go for the stadium. Now imagine, as per my size, 5 feet or 6 feet, whatever of your height, you can imagine size of that particular stadium. It used found to be very, very big, maybe 100 meters, 200 meters or like that. And imagine there is one sand grain of the sand. Okay, so this is the actual cricket ground, and sand grain is kept at the center, geometrical center of this ground. So how you can compare the size of this ground and size of this particular grain? Imagination. Okay, imagine this is the cricket ground and this is the size sand grain which is kept, or any grain. आपल्या कुठल्याही धान्याचा एखादा तुकडा आपण एक ग्रेन म्हणजे आपण we get any of this म्हणजे small, very small grain, that is jawar or bajra or this wheat or sand grain. So this is for imagination purpose. Assume, so what much difference of size here between this cricket ground and this grain? Same is the size difference between this atom and the nucleus. So this is the nucleus and this entire thing is like an atom. So if atom is taken to be one size of 1 unit, then if I divide this particular 1 unit by 10,000, then this becomes the size of the nucleus. So size of the nucleus here is 10,000 times smaller than the size of the atom. So atom is very, very big, and in that sense we say that in atom there is enough empty space. So there is a large enough empty space is there, because most of the mass of this atom is concentrated in the nucleus, which takes a very, very small space, whereas this is the size of atoms where these electrons are revolving. This is a very large size as compared to size of this nucleus, and therefore there is enough empty space. So atom has enough empty space, but the nucleus has not that empty space. It is very densely packed, and if we go for all these things understanding, we'll find that this proton, neutrons, all this is a nucleus. Size of that is 10,000 times smaller than the size of the atom. Now in actual measurement units, we use the measurement unit that is 1 angstrom. 1 angstrom is 10 raised to minus 10 meters. So this size of this atom from this to this is approximately 1 angstrom. Okay, so atom size is 1 angstrom. If it is divided by 10,000, I'll get this number to be 10 raised to minus 14 meters. So size of this nucleus is 10 raised to minus 14 meters. Okay, size of atom is 10 raised to minus 10 meters, or that is in angstrom, here it is approximately 1 angstrom. Divide this by this number 10,000, because in comparison this is 10,000 times smaller than the size of this atom, and dividing this number 10 raised to minus 10 by 10,000, I'll get actual size of this nucleus is around 10 raised to minus 14 meters. So compare, this is the total atom and its total mass. This is the nucleus, and the 99% of the mass is inside the nucleus. So how densely packed this entity, which is nucleus, is. So all protons and neutrons are found to be in a very small space as compared to the total atom's volume, and therefore this proportion gives you this is about 10 raised to minus 14 meters. And out of that, if I go for 1 proton, so again divide it by 10 times more. That means if it is 10,000, I am dividing this size of this atom. If it is divided by 1 lakh time, I get the size of the proton, and if it is calculated, it comes to be 10 raised to minus 15 meters. And this is one more very frequently unit used in nuclear physics, which is called as 1 Fermi. So 1 Fermi, okay, Fermi is this well-known scientist in nuclear physics. In his honor, this unit is defined. 1 Fermi is around 10 raised to minus 15 meters. So remember, size of proton is 10 raised to minus 15 meters, or 1 Fermi. Size of the nucleus of an atom, okay, ordinary atom, not hydrogen atom, because hydrogen atom and protons will have same sizes, and the size of this particular nucleus is around 10 times of the size of the proton. If I am assuming there are 10 nucleons, if there are 10 nucleons in an atom, its size will be 10 times size of this proton, and therefore it comes to be 10 raised to minus 14 meters, whereas size of this proton comes to be 10 raised to minus 15 meters. And this is one very frequently unit, as I said, 1 Fermi, that is equivalent to be 10 raised to minus 15 meters. And remember, if I go for its fraction, so constituents of these protons and neutrons, we have to divide this number by, this is the size of atom. If it is divided by, this is 10 crores, this many lakhs, these many thousands, and then this thing. So 10 crores times, if this particular atoms is divided by 10 crores, whatever we get, that is the size of this quark. Okay, so quark is much smaller as compared to size of this atom. It has to be atom, the whatever dimensions of atom, that is to be divided by 10 crores, and whatever small fraction we will get, that is called as the size of that quark. So quark is much smaller as compared to these protons and neutrons, much smaller as compared to the atom itself, and that comparison shows you. And therefore, if we go for this measurement again, then this number again comes to be very small. But in case of electron, other constituents of the atom, the size of the electron is again 1000 times smaller of the proton, and this it comes to be 10 raised to minus 18 meters. So this is the smallest particle in an atom, that is the electron, which size is 10 raised to minus 18 meters. Size of proton is 10 raised to minus 15 meters. Average, a nucleus containing 10 number of nucleons, its sizes are now 10 raised to minus 14 meters. And when a nucleus is kept inside an atom, if we look or it's measure the size, it is found to be 10 raised to minus 10 meters, or 1 angstrom. So this is called as microphysics. As we go from heavier substances, that means from solid to its atoms, if atom is divided, we'll get these 3 constituents. Out of these 3 constituents, electrons are revolving with size is 10 raised to minus 18 meters, very small as compared to size of this atom. And nucleus has its size to be around 10 raised to minus 14 meters. Out of that, if proton is taken, its size found to be 10 raised to minus 15 meters. And that's why I said inside an atom there is a large amount of empty spaces available. Just like this is in the solar system, this is sun, then this is Mercury, and other than Earth, and so on. So this entire solar system, as compared to their masses and all the sizes, large amount of space is available in which we are living, the space available in which we are living. Same is the case in case of proton, this in the nucleus as well as atom as well. In an atom, the size of the nucleus is so small. When we look outside the atom, the nucleus is very small as compared to the size of this, and this comparison and actual calculation shows you size of the nucleus is 10 raised to minus 14 meters, size of the proton, single proton, is 10 raised to minus 15 meters, whereas size of electron is 10 raised to minus 18 meters. So this size goes on decreasing as we go from atom to electron and proton and nucleus and so on. And even if we go for the quarks, still it is much smaller, immeasurable of course, and that is 1 atomic size divided by, or 1 angstrom divided by 10 crores, whatever this number comes, that is said to be the size of the quark. So don't worry about this at this present. At present we have to deal with all these things. And how much time? Now in this case there is one specific example. Take this example of 1H1 hydrogen atom. Now we know that hydrogen atom, this is the proton and this is the electron which is revolving. So nucleus of hydrogen atom is of 10 raised to minus 15 meters, and here the size of this is given to be 10 raised to minus 10 meters. So this proton and this electron is revolving around the proton. It is called as hydrogen atom. That shows you 10 raised to minus 10 is much bigger as 10 raised to minus 15. 10,000 or 1 lakh times bigger than that, and that's how enough empty space is in case of hydrogen atom. That is not only for hydrogen atom, but any of the atom we go for heavier, there is enough empty space because sizes of these elementary particles like protons, neutrons, electron or nucleus itself are very small. And now I will give one question: from where we get this information? From where we got this information, or we obtained information? And this is what one of the very great experiment was done by, one of the very interesting experiment was in physics, and important experiment is physics, and that is called as the Rutherford scattering experiments. And now in classical mechanics we have learned there is a particle scattering. So center of lab system, then the center of mass system or lab system, etc. All these things seen here. So this type of classical ideas have been used by Rutherford to understand the size or the structure of the nucleus. So as I said, atomic physics was well known till that time, till Rutherford, but people were not knowing anything about the nucleus and its size and its constituents, etc. That was not known there. And for that case, there was very nice experiment was done by Rutherford, which is called as alpha particle scattering. Okay. Now till then it was not known that alpha particle is maybe that helium nucleus and so on, but this is a particle which contains 2 positive charges, twice E, and this is the one simple experiment. Here he held, this is the one gold foil, and this alpha particles are found to be striking this or instant on this particular phase. Most of the alpha particles are found to be passing through this. Some change their path as shown by this is scattering, and very small or 1 or 2 alpha particles gets reflected back directly from that particular gold foil. So this is what one very simple idea on which this Rutherford did this particular simple experiment. He incident upon the gold foil or any metal, he thrown some alpha particles and he studied the scattering of this alpha particle, and that particular scattering played a very vital role in understanding the size of the nucleus. Already we have seen in atom there is enough empty space. Through that empty space some of the alpha particles can directly pass through. So this is what we are getting here. Some of the alpha particles which are, since this is a positively charged nucleus because of the protons, these alpha particles are again twice positively charged particle. There must be some electrostatic interaction, and thereby these particles gets reflected, or that they change their direction, gets deflected, that is scattering. As close this alpha particle is here, that maximum interaction will be there and maximum deflection will be there. If this alpha particle is here, this deflection is very small, little bit. So this deflection goes on increasing as this closest approach or this impact factor goes on increasing. And in some cases, now some of the alpha particles are such that it is exactly striking its center, but because of its positive charge twice E plus and this positive charge, this electron is not, this alpha particle is not allowed to touch this particular nucleus, but it gets reflected back. That is just like a head-on collision. Collision doesn't occur, but these alpha particles get reflected back, and this is what a very simple phenomenon studied by Rutherford to understand this particular nature or the size of this particular nucleus, and that is what this simple experiment here. So shown here, this is what twice E, that is alpha particle. This alpha particle approaches toward this ZE, that is the nucleus. Okay, don't worry about this atom. Atom is much bigger as compared to nucleus. Size of this alpha particle and size of this nucleus, they are comparable to each other. This alpha particle travels towards a nucleus, and because of this electrostatic repulsion between positive charges of this and positive charge of the nucleus, this is just coming here, its velocity is reducing, getting zero, it stops momentarily, and because of this electromagnetic interaction, that gets repelled back and it changes its path. So that shows this alpha particle comes here, closest approach, and then goes back, and this particular alpha particle's properties are measured, and based upon that, these are the following formulas he has given. One can measure the size of this type of nucleus, which is containing ZE number of protons or this number of charges there. So here he used this electromagnetic interaction to understand the size of that nucleus, and for that we have to understand this. So Rutherford was the first person investigated in the alpha particle scattering experiment. He found an expression for how close an alpha particle moving towards the nucleus can come before being turned around by the Coulomb force. So Coulombic interaction must be there between this helium nucleus or this alpha particles, positively charged alpha particles, and this nucleus. So that is what shown in this diagram. On the basis of that, this D is to be calculated, and this D is nothing but taken to be the size of the nucleus. For that, the kinetic energy, okay, third point here we can discuss here, the kinetic energy of the particle must be completely converted to potential energy. So this energy reduces, so that gets converted into potential energy when it reaches here, and again this potential energy decreases and starts increasing its kinetic energy. So conversion of Ke to Pe, this simple concept has been understood, taken by this, and on the basis of that he showed that this kinetic energy of the particle must be completely converted to P, and we know that moving particle, its kinetic energy is given by 1/2 mv square, whereas the potential energy, this is a constant proportionality, charge of this Q1 into Q2 upon distance r, that this r is to be calculated, that is what we are called to be a range of this particular interaction, or this is called as the size of that particular nucleus. So you are replacing this Ke, I know that its value is knowledge. So Q1 is twice E, that is the charge over the alpha particle. Ze is the charge over this particular nucleus, and D is the distance or the closest approach between this particle, this alpha particle, and this nucleus. So replacing this 1/2 mv square is equal to Ke into Q1 Q2 upon r is equal to K constant, that is K0 into twice E multiplied by Ze upon D, and if I go for this calculation, that gives me D is equal to, so this, if D is calculated, one gets 4 times K into Ze square upon mv square. So here this is a constant, it can be measured, Z is known, E square is known, mass of this alpha particle is known, its velocity also can be measured. So all these quantities on the right hand side are the measurable quantities. In actual experiment, measuring all these numbers, 4K0, that is not to be needed, electron charge is also not to be needed, its measurement, Z is also known, mass of that alpha particle is also known, and its velocity is to be measured. Just measuring its velocity, we can find out the size of the nucleus, and this is what the experiment, which is called as famous alpha particle scattering experiment, through which this particular Rutherford proved that the nucleus is an entity which is very small size. Most of the mass of an atom is concentrated there, and its size can be measured using this simple experiment called as alpha particle experiment. And on the basis of that, he measured for gold, this number comes to be 3.2 into 10 raised to minus 14 meters. So for gold, this is what a number calculated as seen here. Now he replaced this particular foil, gold foil is replaced by silver, and then later on he found the same result is found there, and this what same experiment he carried out for the different element, and he found that for silver atom, a nucleus of the size of this silver is around 2 into 10 raised to minus 14 meters. So that's what, as we change the element, this number is found to be different, and that's what, on the basis of that, he did this simple experiment on almost all known elements till that time, and he found that for every element, this size of the nucleus, or the size of the entity over which all these positive charges are concentrated, that is found to be different. And as we go for heavier and heavier element, right from hydrogen to go for up to the element, okay, first it is hydrogen, then helium, then other elements like carbon, oxygen, magnesium, ferrous, and all many things, then go up to uranium, and then go up to element that is containing 110 number of protons, some other elements. And this particular case, it has been found we can carry out this experiment for each and every element in the periodic table, and based upon that, we will be able to calculate the size of every nuclei of every element as shown by this simple experiment. So though even this experiment was carried out before 100 years, but it is one of the milestone in the history of nuclear physics, which had for the first time estimated the size of the nucleus. Of course, size of the nucleus measured here is a bit different. So such small lengths are often expressed as femtometers, where 1 femto is equal to 10 raised to minus 15 meters. Already we have called this to be things. Now look at this. So whether this is actual size of this, that is what the entity of the nucleus, whether the size, or this is the because of electrostatic repulsion, whether this is electrostatic influence of that ZE or that nucleus is experienced, that is a bit difficulty there to understand whether this is actual physical size or it is its electromagnetic field, influence of the electromagnetic field. That type of confusion may be there, but that is not a great thing here. For the first time, alpha particle scattering experiment or Rutherford scattering experiment measured sizes of different nuclei of different elements in the periodic table, and this is what our first step of understanding of the nucleus. So size of the nucleus is measured later on, and then it was found later on there is one very empirical relation. We can go for this, okay, this relationship, that is R is equal to I will more about this we'll discuss later on. Let's see all these things here. So on the basis of his experiment, Rutherford conducted that range of nuclear forces must be less than the order of the 10 raised to minus 14 meter. What it means? He showed that this is the nucleus, size of this is 10 raised to around 10 raised to minus 14 meters, and whatever these protons and neutrons inside this, these protons and neutrons are bound in such a manner that whatever strong nuclear force existing between them, this range of this force is less than 10 raised to minus 14 meter. That is what, if I have one nucleus here, this is one proton here, and if it is another nucleus and same nucleus here, and these are the protons, there exists no force of attraction between these two protons, but there exists a repulsion, because the force of attraction, strong nuclear force, exists between the nucleons, either protons or neutrons, when they are inside the nucleus. That's why he concluded very important conclusion on the basis of that 10 raised to minus 14 meters must be the range of the strong nuclear force. Beyond that range, such force doesn't exist. That means if protons are kept at a distance of 10 raised to minus 14 meters, they attract each other. Same protons, if they are separated at a distance greater than 10 raised to minus 14 meters, then these protons repel each other. So here electromagnetic interaction or reaction, interaction here, and here this is the strong nuclear interaction. So strong nuclear interaction is possible inside the nucleus in case of protons, proton, neutrons, neutron, protons, and range of that is 10 raised to minus 14 meters. This force doesn't exist between two protons which are separated by more than a distance of this nuclear size. So that is very important conclusion calculated from this particular experiment. Then he assumed that nuclei are spheres of radius r. Okay. Now remember, every nucleus is not an exact sphere. Some nuclei are sphere, some nuclei have some oblate shape, some nuclei have some roulette shape, etc. But in general, we are assuming all these nucleids are having their shape to be spherical one, and that's why we calculated this radius. Otherwise, radius of this will be different, radius of this will be different from which side we are looking. Based upon that, this radius may go on changing, but this much approximation is there. Almost he understood, he concluded that almost all nuclei are spheres of radius capital R. Then particles, protons, electrons, protons, neutrons and alphas scatter when projected close to the nucleus. That is what we have seen earlier slide. It is not obvious whether the maximum interaction distance refers to the nuclear size, that is matter radius, actual matter radius, or whether the nuclear force extends beyond the nuclear matter, that is force radius. So whatever radius we have measured in the earlier case, this is whether it's a force radius or whether it's a matter radius. That can be a confusion always, but remember, most of these things are found to be very, very close to each other. So that is whatever approximation we are using here, that approximation is such that there is no much difference between this force radius and matter radius, but detailed inquiry of that may give you some information about that. We are not interested here at this time. Now this nuclear force is often called as the strong force, what we have seen, because it is stronger than this electromagnetic force. Whatever repulsion, it has to overcome this repulsion, and that's why it is stronger. Almost it is the strongest of all forces. So nuclear force radius and mass radius and charge radius, okay, all these things are approximately equal, and that's why we are able to conclude that this is the size of the nuclei, this is the size of the range of this particular force, and every nucleus is almost approximately spherical. So all these conclusions can be concluded from this case. The nuclear radius may be approximated. So on the data, experimental data of all these elements, right from element number 1 to element number 110 or 15, it has been found that the radius of the nucleus and its mass number, this A is equal to N and Z, radius of the nucleus and mass number of the nucleus, they are connected by a simple relationship, and this is given by R is equal to R0 times A raised to 1 by 3. For in case of hydrogen, we have capital A is equal to 1 because only one proton, and therefore R is equal to R0 times 1 raised to 1 by 3 is also equal to 1, and that is R is equal to R0. That means R is equal to R0, that is called as radius of hydrogen atom, hydrogen nucleus, radius of hydrogen nucleus. So first measure the radius of hydrogen nucleus, that is the radius of the proton, and if this number is known, just knowing the number of nucleons contained by the nucleus, whether there are 50 nucleons, whether there are 20 nucleons, whether there are 100 nucleons, whether there are 200 nucleons, based upon that the size of the nuclei goes on increasing, and this relationship, which is called as empirical relationship. So empirical relationship or measurement of the radius of the nuclei, which is given by R is equal to R0 times A raised to 1 by 3, where R0 is the radius of the hydrogen nucleus, which is given by 1.2 into 10 raised to minus 15 meters. So using this simple relationship, we can measure radius of any nuclei, provided we understand or we know the number of nucleons contained by that particular nucleus. And here this number Fermi, 10 raised to minus 15 meters, is also called as femtometer or 1 Fermi. So we use the femtometer with 1 Fermi, that is equal to 10 raised to minus 15 meter or the Fermi. So this is what the basic information related to nucleus and its properties like mass and its size and shape. There is one more slide in this concern that I would like to share with you. Now look at this diagram. This tells you one very interesting information about the nucleus is as follows. Okay, so this is size and shape of the nucleus. So see the graph. This is nuclear charge density, okay, ratio, versus this is the radial distance. That means this is the nucleus. Okay, I have to go, this is from its center to its radius R. I have to go on measuring this nuclear charge density. Okay, so whatever charge contained by this, make a small volumes of this, small fractions of this, go on measuring this nuclear charge density from the center, then this distance, this distance, this distance, everywhere, and just plot this nuclear charge density versus this R. If this graph is plotted for any of the element, not for hydrogen, we get this ratio. Now this is 1 at the center, at its radius or this R equal to 0, this is 1, and we'll find that as we go on increasing this radial distance in Fermi, okay, 10 raised to minus 15 meters, for 1, 2, 3, 4, etc., in a large region, that means from the center to this dense part, this remains constant. So nuclear charge density is found to be constant here, but as we approach towards the boundary or the outer side of this nuclei, you'll find that this nuclear charge density goes on decreasing as shown by this, and at a certain large distance, 9 Fermi or somewhere, this nuclear charge density becomes simply 0. That is what I am doing, supposed to do this. This is the nucleus, measure its charge density or nuclear charge density on different points. You will find that this nuclear charge density varies from 1 to 0, and that shows you there is not a clear-cut boundary. There is not a clear-cut boundary. The surface of this nuclei is found to be such that this nuclear charge density goes on varying like this. So here there is a nuclear charge density goes on decreasing. It becomes 0.9, then 0.5, then 0.1, and so on, and finally it becomes 0. That is how when we look at the nucleus from outside, most of the nucleons, protons and neutrons, try to gather at the center, and very few nucleons are found to be on the surface of that nucleus. They are little bit loosely bound, and that's why this shape of the nucleus, when we go for actual calculation of shape, size and shape of the nucleus, we have to keep this fact in mind, that nucleus is not that perfect sphere like football or earth. It is a sphere, but most of the, if its nuclear charge density is calculated, there is a found to be a variation of the nuclear charge density, and that variation shows here. Out of that, we select this point, okay, and that is called as the, so whatever measurements we have done, we have measured this R. So this is what the average radius or the size of that nuclei, where it is found its nuclear charge density gets reduced to half of its maximum value, that is 1. So from 1 to 0.5, this fraction is said to be the nuclear radius of the one nuclei, and this small l, okay, sorry, small t, this point to this point, where it this nuclear charge density is 0.9 to this is almost 0.1. This region is called as the thickness of the surface, thickness of nuclear surface. Okay, this is like, just like go for the structure of the earth. In case of earth, we know that most of the part of the earth is having mantle and that this inner core and anything, and whatever around above it, this is around 100 kilometers and so on. This is called as the crust of the earth. So in this case also, here also, if we go for measuring the density of the different materials, you will find as the density goes on varying, and here the density is found to be decreasing. Same is the case in case of the nucleus too. In this case, for the most of the inside of the nucleus, this nuclear density is found to be maximum around 1, and as we come to the closer and closer to the surface, this nuclear density goes on decreasing. Out of that, where this nuclear density changes from 0.91 to 0.5, that distance is called as the nuclear radius. And out of this, when this nuclear charge density varies from 0.9 to 0.1, this surface is called as thickness of the crust of that particular nucleus, and it is what this idea is used here. So if we approximate the nuclear shape as a sphere, okay, sphere, we can go for this simple calculation, that is V is equal to 4 by 3 pi r0 cube. This is the formula for a volume of the nucleus, and if it is multiplied by A, we will get volume. Or if I go for this nuclear density, I will go for the same calculation here, and therefore volume is given by 4 by 3 pi r0 cube into A. A is the number of nucleons contained by this, or the volume is directly proportional to A here. Okay, volume is directly proportional to A here. For smaller nuclei, this way will be smaller. As we go on increasing this number of nuclei, this volume will go on increasing, and this is the proportionality constant as shown here. So it is 4 by 3 pi r0 cube, that is the constant, and here A is the number of nucleons. So volume of this nucleus goes on increasing as we increase this number of nucleons. This can be understood, and on the basis of, if I go for measurement of its density, density is given by mass upon volume. Okay, and as we say here, if I go for this mass upon volume, mass is nothing but number of protons plus neutrons, that is A times whatever mass of this, either use MeV or use any of the unit or grams, kilograms, etc. And if it is divided by the volume, volume is given by 4 by 3 pi r0 cube into capital A. So both this AA gets cancelled, and whatever we get here is said to be a constant. So I can, R0 is known to us, that is for hydrogen atom. 4 by 3 pi r0 can be calculated, and this constant is nothing but nuclear density. If it is calculated, this number is found to be very, very big. That is why nuclear mass density is found to be almost 2.3 into 10 raised to 7 kilograms, 17 kilograms per meter cube. Now in comparison to water, take a water of 1 meter into 1 meter into thickness 1 meter. This water will found to be, okay, if I take this type of cube of the water, you will find out this water to be around 1000 kilograms. Okay, 1 meter by 1 meter by 1 meter is 1000 kilograms. And if the density of the water, if it is calculated either grams or kilograms, it comes to be only 10 raised to 3 kilograms per meter cube. Whereas you can compare the nuclear mass density is 2.3 into 10 raised to 17 kilograms per meter cube, or it means it is 2.3 into 10 raised to 14 times bigger than the mass density of the water or any of the solid. When we go for comparison, you'll find that nuclear mass density or nuclear density is much bigger number, and that's why most of the mass of a nucleus or atom is concentrated in the nucleus. So this is one of the very dense subject or dense substance. Nucleus itself is a very dense substance as compared to any of the substance we know, either liquid or solid or gas or anything which we are able to see by our own eyes. As compared to that, nature has given nuclear mass density to be much bigger, and that is 2.3 into 10 raised to 17 kilograms per meter cube. Calculations are not important. We are interested in the numbers. That number shows nuclear mass density is much bigger as compared to any of the things which are existing around us. So this is one more very interesting concept we should understand, and we should know that how to go for size and shape of the nucleus and nuclear mass density, and so many things are here. Okay, so this first part of this chapter we have finished here. In the next part we will go for the other concepts associated with the nucleus and so on. So we will stop here. In the next lecture we will go for the second part. So thank you for patience listening right from the beginning. Let me stop the, thank you all.